Okay, so let's get into one of the most dramatic clashes in English history. We're looking at the Peasants' Revolt of 1381. This was a moment when ordinary people, well, they turned the tables on the rich and powerful and almost brought the kingdom to its knees.
Oh, this was way more than just a riot. We're talking about a huge, coordinated uprising that spread like wildfire across England. It really shook the foundations of society.
And it all started pretty small, didn't it? The first spark was just some villagers in a town called Essex who flat out refused to pay a new tax.
Exactly, a tax they saw as completely unfair. And that local act of defiance just exploded. So today, we're going to break it all down. We'll look at the economic pressures that have been building for years, who the leaders were, and what they wanted.
Right, and we'll track their march on London, the destruction they caused, and probably the most amazing part, how a 14-year-old king managed to survive it.
And finally, why this revolt, which technically failed, ended up changing everything.
Okay, so to really get the anger, you have to look at the bigger picture. This wasn't just about one tax. The country was basically a powder keg waiting for a match.
Well, the key context here is the Black Death. It had swept through a few decades earlier, and, I mean, the devastation was unbelievable. It killed maybe a third, even up to half of the entire population.
A third to a half, that's just staggering, and that must have totally upended the economy.
It did. It's simple supply and demand, really. All of a sudden, there were far fewer workers. So the peasants who survived realized their labor was incredibly valuable.
So they could ask for more money?
Yep. They started demanding higher wages, better conditions, and landowners were so desperate they had to pay up.
But I'm guessing the people in charge, the lords, the king's council, they wouldn't have liked that very much.
Not at all. They saw this as a threat to the whole system. So they passed these really harsh laws, the Statute of Laborers, to try and force wages back down to what they were before the plague.
Trying to fight against the market, basically. How did that go?
It didn't really work. But what it did do was create this deep, simmering resentment that just built and built for years. The anger was already there, it just needed a trigger.
And that trigger was the poll tax. This is what really lit the fuse, wasn't it?
It was. What made this tax so hated was how it worked. It was a flat rate, meaning everyone over the age of 15 paid the exact same amount. It didn't matter if you were a rich duke or a farm laborer who could barely feed his family. Same price.
Wow. Yeah, you can see why that would feel so unjust.
Absolutely. And King Richard II needed the money. The 100 Years' War with France was costing a fortune. So Parliament approved not one, not two, but three of these poll taxes.
And the third one, in 1381, was the one that broke the camel's back.
It was triple the cost of the earlier ones. It was just impossible for ordinary families to pay. So naturally, people started trying to get out of it, hiding family members, lying to the tax collectors.
But the government pushed back.
They did. When the numbers came in way too low, they sent out royal commissioners to enforce the collection. And it was these guys, going door to door, demanding the money, that turned that anger into open, violent revolt.
Which is where the leaders come in. Because a mob is one thing, but an organized force is something else entirely. Let's talk about Wat Tyler.
Wat Tyler is the name everyone remembers. He seems to have been the practical military-style leader.
His background is a little hazy, right?
A little. He was probably a Tyler, a roofer from Kent. But there's a good chance he had some military experience, maybe from the wars in France. And it shows, because he was able to shape these angry crowds into a more disciplined force, he gave them focus.
And what was his big demand?
It was revolutionary, really. He argued that all men should be free from the control of their lords. He wanted to break the system of serfdom for good.
So Tyler was the organizer, but the ideas, the moral fire, that came from someone else, John Ball.
John Ball, yeah. He was a radical priest who was already in big trouble with the church for his sermons. He gave the peasants the why.
The justification.
Exactly. He asked this incredibly powerful and dangerous question. Why are some people born to be lords and masters, while the rest of us are born to be their slaves?
And his answer was that, in the beginning, in God's eyes, everyone was equal.
Right. Nobility, serfdom, that was all just invented by men, not by God. He had that famous rhyme that summed it all up.
When Adam delved and Eve span, who was then the gentleman.
When Adam was digging in the fields and Eve was spinning cloth, there were no aristocrats. It was a powerful message. It told people that their fight wasn't a crime, it was a fight for justice.
So with Tyler's organization and Ball's ideas, this thing just explodes.
It does. In June of 1381, rebels from two counties, Kent and Essex, start marching on London, and they move fast.
And they're not just marching, are they? They're doing something very specific along the way.
Yes, and this is so clever. In every town they go through, they attack the administrative buildings and they burn all the tax records and legal documents.
Ah, so they're trying to erase the evidence.
The evidence of their debts, and more importantly, the records that prove they were serfs tied to the land. They were trying to literally wipe the slate clean.
So they get to London, and the city just lets them in.
Well, a lot of the ordinary people in London were on their side. They opened the gates. And for the rich and powerful, it was complete panic. The king and his whole court had to run and hide in the Tower of London.
And the rebels then targeted the ultimate symbol of everything they hated, the Savoy Palace.
The Savoy, yes. This was the palace of John of Gaunt. He was the king's uncle, the Duke of Lancaster, and probably the most powerful and most hated man in England.
Why was he so hated?
He was seen as corrupt, as the power behind the throne, and the person whose expensive foreign wars were the reason for these terrible taxes. He was the villain of the story.
So destroying his palace was a huge statement.
A massive one.
Yeah.
But here's the crucial detail. They found all this gold and silver inside, incredible riches, but they didn't steal it?
They didn't.
No. They made a point of destroying it, smashing it to pieces, throwing it in the river. They even executed one of their own men for trying to pocket a silver cup.
Wow.
It proved this wasn't about looting. It was about politics. It was about justice.
So now the king, just a teenager, is trapped in the tower, and a rebel army is in control of his capital. This is the absolute crisis point.
It is. And Richard II, who remember is only 14, does something pretty remarkable. He agrees to meet them. He rides out to a place called Mile End on June 14th.
Straight into the lion's den, and what do they ask for?
Their core demands, the complete end of serfdom. And they wanted to pay a fixed, fair rent for their land instead of being forced to work for the Lord for free.
And the king just says yes.
Amazingly, yes. He agrees to everything. He promises to give them official royal charters guaranteeing their freedom.
And it worked.
It did, for a lot of them.
It did.
Many of the rebels felt they'd won. The king had listened. So they started to pack up and go home.
But not
everyone. While the king was making promises at Mile End, a more radical group did the unthinkable. They attacked the Tower of London.
The most secure fortress in the country?
And they got in. They stormed the place, found the officials hiding inside, including the Archbishop of Canterbury and the king's treasurer.
And they didn't just capture them.
No. They dragged them outside to Tower Hill and publicly executed them, put their heads on pikes. This was a political assassination at the highest level. It showed the fight was far from over.
Which leads to the final, fatal meeting at Smithfield.
The next day, yes. Tyler meets the king again, but his demands now are even more extreme.
What did he want?
He wanted to basically abolish the entire social order, divide up the church's wealth, get rid of all lords, all ranks, and England with no masters.
That's asking a king to abolish kingship.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And during this super tense meeting, an argument breaks out between Tyler and the mayor of London. The mayor thinks Tyler is being disrespectful to the king. He draws his sword and he strikes Tyler.
He attacks him in the middle of negotiations.
Wounds him badly. Tyler falls off his horse. And the huge crowd of rebels sees their leader cut down right in front of them.
Oh, this is the moment. They must have been furious.
Absolutely furious. They start drawing their bowstrings. It looks like they're about to kill the king and his entire group. This is where English history could have changed forever.
But it didn't because of what Richard did next.
This is his moment of, well, incredible bravery and quick thinking.
He rides his horse, alone, straight towards the angry mob.
Straight at them. And he shouts something like, "Sirs, will you shoot your king? I am your captain. I will be your leader." He tells them to follow him, that he'll give them everything they want.
And they believe him.
It stunned them. It completely worked. Remember, John Ball had told them the king was good. It was his advisors who were evil. When their leader, Tyler, fell, Richard stepped right into that role.
Incredible. So they followed him, and that allowed the government to get back in control.
Exactly. It diffused the single most dangerous moment of the entire revolt. But once the danger was gone, so were the promises.
Right. Once the rebels had left London, the crackdown began.
Swift and brutal. The king gathered an army, and then he made an announcement.
Let me guess. All those charters of freedom he promised.
All canceled. He said promises made under threat weren't legally binding.
And then came the punishments.
Oh, yeah. Judges were sent out to hunt down the leaders. John Ball was captured, tried, and executed in a particularly gruesome way. By the end of the summer, the revolt was officially crushed.
So on the surface, a complete failure.
In the short term, yes, a total failure. But its long-term impact was huge. It changed things forever.
How so?
Well, for one, that Hayden poll tax was never tried again for hundreds of years. The ruling class learned that some things were just too unfair to push on people.
A very clear warning was sent.
A very clear, very bloody warning. And landowners also learned a lesson. They realized trying to force serfdom on people was just too dangerous. To keep workers on their farms, they had to start treating them better.
So better wages, fairer rents.
Exactly. Slowly, over the next century or so, serfdom just withered away. The revolt accelerated its death. The memory of 1381 showed what could happen if you pushed ordinary people too far.
So even though the revolt was crushed and the leaders were killed, the core ideas about fairness, about freedom, they actually won in the long run.
They did. They executed the men, but they couldn't execute the idea that people deserved to be free.
And it's amazing to think about that one pivotal moment. This spontaneous act of courage from a teenage king might have saved his kingdom, but in the end, he couldn't stop the changes the rebels had demanded. Their ideas outlived them all. Good luck with your studies.